Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining me on this Saturday afternoon, or whatever time of day it happens to be where you are. My name is Mairead, and I am based in the west of Ireland. We have a lovely webinar topic today. We're going to talk all about using authentic materials. Before we jump into the webinar, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been teaching for over 20 years now. I've been lucky enough to work all over the world with all nationalities, all ages. And yeah, I'm really excited for you all that you are just starting off on your teaching journey. It's a wonderful, wonderful job. And part of what makes it wonderful is that we get to use all sorts of material and all sorts of fun stories, songs, all of that sort of fun material with our students to help bring them a little closer to the world of English. So with that in mind, let's get started. We're going to look at how to integrate authentic materials in class. So the first thing you're probably wondering is, what are authentic materials? Well, they are materials that proficient speakers would use in their everyday real-world context. Okay, some examples of authentic materials might be restaurant menus, songs, newspaper articles or online blogs, TV or newspaper advertisements. Okay, basically anything that a native or proficient speaker would use in their everyday lives. Okay, so have a think about when you're sitting down in the evening. What sort of thing do you watch? What sort of thing do you listen to? Or what sort of thing do you read? Okay, chances are that they would all be authentic material. What's the difference then between authentic and EFL teaching materials? Well, authentic materials are not created specifically for teaching the language. Okay, they are produced for native or native-like speakers of English, not specifically for learners. Authentic materials are used and are incredibly useful to enable students to immerse themselves in the English language. So we have our authentic material, which is created for native or native-like speakers of English. Then we also have non-authentic material. Now, non-authentic material is anything that has been designed specifically for the process of teaching English. Okay. So, for example, all of the worksheets that you find online, maybe the grammar worksheets, all of the student textbooks, for learning English, all of those videos explaining grammar or explaining vocabulary, okay, instructional CDs and DVDs, they are all non-authentic because they are created with the sole purpose of helping students to learn English. So, they're not naturally occurring in the real world, okay? You wouldn't sit down at night and pull out your intermediate textbook and start reading, right? Also, all of the language learning websites and apps, things like Duolingo or things like BBC Learn English, okay? They have a lot of material, but they are not authentic, okay? And that's fine, non-authentic material definitely has its place in the world. But as I said, today we're going to look at authentic material. So what are the advantages then of using authentic material? Well, I think the biggest advantage is that it's very motivating for students. Okay, they can understand genuine texts aimed at L1 speakers or native speakers or native-like proficient speakers. Okay, students love nothing more than when you say, okay, everyone, put away the textbooks. Let's take a look at something I found yesterday that you might be interested in. Okay, your students love any opportunity to work with real English from the real world. It's very, very motivating for them, very satisfying. Also, a huge advantage of using authentic material is exposure to the natural use of language in a genuine context. Okay, so if you bring in, for example, a newspaper article, yeah, from an Irish newspaper, UK newspaper, American or Australian newspaper, again, the students will see an article in context. Okay, it won't be just like a paragraph pulled out and sanitized. Okay, they'll be seeing the whole thing in its natural form, in its original state. And students can learn a lot from this exposure. Apart from that, authentic materials prepare students for daily life in a foreign country. Okay, so if, for example, your student's aim is to move to Ireland or to move to the UK, or to move to any country in which they will be using English as their primary language, using authentic materials helps prepare them for this. They can see, perhaps what a menu looks like, what an application form looks like, okay, what the newspapers look like, the format of the TV reports. Okay, so, it goes beyond language. It also gives them an insight into the cultural atmosphere of the country they intend to go live in. All right, so many advantages. I do think, though, that it's the motivation and satisfaction that's the most important, okay, because that is what we want our students to feel. Okay, however, oops. Oh, no, we're still on advantages. I'm sorry, I was running ahead of myself. Some more advantages could be that the topics can be selected according to the students' interests. For example, I worked in Spain for many, many, many years. And as in most countries, Spanish people love food. And they have some amazing food. So, I would always be on the lookout for some authentic material related to the world of food. Whether it was, for example, English people writing about Spanish food, or whether it was from an Irish paper talking about food around the world, I would always look for food. Yeah, I mean, food, who doesn't love it, right? So, you can find out what your students are interested in, and then it's like half of your brain is always thinking about this. And as soon as you read it anywhere, you're like, ooh, let me take that and see if I can use it with my students. Okay. I also in Spain, I had a class full of teenagers who were really into movies. Okay. They used to just spend hours talking about superhero movies in particular. So again, anytime I would be, reading online reviews, or if I came across a trailer for a new movie, that would set the little bells going in my head, and I would think, oh, I need to get this, I need to keep this, save this, and I need to use it with my students because I know they'll really enjoy it. So, find out your students' interests and always be on the lookout. Okay. Another advantage could be that using authentic materials gives students confidence more than anything. Okay. It helps them know that they can engage in conversation, or they can understand texts aimed at native-like or proficient speakers. Okay. Sometimes when you use the textbook all the time, it can kind of be an artificial world. Okay, like artificial contexts, everything graded, everything perfect. So, of course, textbooks can get a bit restrictive if you only use textbooks all of the time. But yeah, the authentic material can definitely increase your students' engagement and increase their confidence. And above all, it provides challenge. Okay. If, for example, you're using your textbook, you will find that all of the listening recordings are all perfect. Like, nobody hesitates, nobody repeats themselves, nobody starts a sentence, abandons it, and starts again. okay? Whereas with the authentic material, if you find a listening recording, maybe a TED Talk, or maybe a news podcast, yeah, students will hear all of the natural things that proficient speakers do, yeah, such as hesitating, rephrasing, going off on tangents, etc. So yeah, it's a really, really good challenge for them. However, along with all of the advantages, there are also some disadvantages. But luckily, all of the disadvantages have solutions. It's just a matter of finding that solution. So let's take a run through some of the disadvantages of using authentic materials, and then with each one, we'll discuss a way that we can overcome that problem. So first disadvantage. Unlike graded texts, yeah, such as texts you might find in course books or in language learning apps, some of the language may be above the student's level, okay? So because authentic materials are not graded, yeah, they're not specifically made for learners of English, there can be a lot of difficult vocabulary in there, a lot of, maybe not so common grammatical structures, etc. So the first solution we could have to this problem is that the teacher can simplify the material to suit the level of the student. So you may take your authentic text and you may swap some of the difficult words for easier synonyms, okay? Or if there's a super complicated grammatical structure, for example, if it says, had it not been for the police, the thief would have escaped. Yeah, had it not been for, that's quite difficult, right? So you might just change that to, if it hadn't been for the police, the thief would have escaped. So, you can make minor simplifications if you feel that the text has some really difficult bits. Of course, because we're making changes, we can't really call them authentic materials anymore, but, they are semi-authentic. Okay, like they will be 95% authentic, but we will have made some simplifications. That can be a nice way to introduce your students to authentic texts. So that we don't scare them too much right off the bat. So, creating your semi-authentic materials can still be very, very worthwhile. But I would say try to change as little as possible if you are going down this route. Okay. Another solution to the problem of language being graded at too difficult a level could be to use a language profiler to select difficult vocabulary items for pre-teaching. Now, as you go through the course, you will find that we recommend a language profiler called vocabkitchen.com. I'm going to just pop it in the chat box. As I said, you will come across it online. Vocab Kitchen is a great example of a vocab profiler. You copy and paste the original text into the profiler, and it will tell you like which words are graded at B1 level, which words are C1, C2, etc. So if you are teaching, for example, an intermediate class, a B1 class, and you want to use a certain authentic text, pop it into the profiler and it will tell you which words are graded above B1 level. That means that you need to take those words and pre-teach. So before you give students the text, you can spend 10 minutes going through the difficult words, pre-teaching the meanings, so that when students come to read the text or listen to the text, they won't hit that stumbling block of not understanding. Okay. So language profilers are amazing, and we specifically recommend and like the vocabkitchen.com profiler. Okay, another disadvantage could be that cliches and jargon are often used, difficult for students to understand. All right. For example, I was watching one of my favorite dramas, police dramas, yesterday on BBC. and they use the expression that the perp, yeah, which is the perpetrator, the perp is in the clink. In the clink, yeah, jargon or slang for prison. Okay, so you'd imagine, yeah, students would not have much chance of understanding that expression, right? So what we could do then is present these difficult words or phrases in context, yeah, pre-teach them, just as we would pre-teach any item of vocabulary, and concept check for understanding. Okay. So again, we're picking out the things we know they won't understand. We're teaching it in advance, yeah, and we're concept checking to make sure that they have understood. So that when they come to listening or reading the authentic text, that difficult word will not be a stumbling block for them. Okay, so we're smoothing the path. This doesn't mean that we have to pre-teach every difficult word in the text, because if we did that, we would probably be there all day and it would just become a giant vocabulary lesson. So what you want to do is pick out the difficult phrases that are essential for meaning and that cannot be guessed from context. All right. There may be some difficult words or phrases in the authentic material, but that are then later explained in the text. There's no need to pre-teach it if the word is then explained in the text, right? Because then students can just read it and figure it out for themselves. All right. When it comes to listening to audio texts, a big disadvantage might be that a speaker may not articulate words separately. Words will run into each other or be difficult to hear. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time with Irish people. Yeah. If you have, you'll notice that we tend to speak quite quickly. I know people from every country do this, but my students tell me that Irish people are especially problematic for their speed of delivery. All of the words run into each other, all of the sentences carry on really quickly, and it can be hard for the student to locate themselves to understand what's being said. For example, this question, do you want coffee? May sound like, do you want coffee? Yeah, do you want... Okay, we're just saying it so quickly that all of the words are running in. Do you want coffee? So yeah, again, it's not just an Irish thing. People of all countries do this when speaking their native language. But yeah, it tends to be an issue here. So what can we do with it? Well, it's not something that has a super quick fix, unfortunately. Listening comprehension is a long-term project, okay? Whenever we're using authentic material or authentic listening material, we have to take some time to spend on aspects of connected speech or quick speech, okay? How can we do this? Well, just like the example we did there, you could write up a sentence on the board like, do you want coffee? Yeah, let students see it. Let them say the words individually, do you want coffee? And then gradually, as the teacher, build up the speed so that you're running the sentences on. And eventually you end up with, do you want coffee? Do you want coffee? Now, the goal is not for students to speak like that. Yeah, we don't want, our aim is not to make students' pronunciation like that. It may happen, it may not. It's not our goal. Our goal is for them to be able to understand it, okay? So that little by little, as they listen to more proficient speakers speaking quickly, they will learn to follow the flow, not to listen for individual words, but more to go with the flow of comprehension, okay? So, don't be afraid of teaching pronunciation, and don't be afraid of exposing them to very quick speech. Okay, they need that in order to improve. Okay, another disadvantage is accents. I know my students tended to have a lot of difficulty with two specific accents. They used to have difficulty understanding the Australian accent, and they used to have a lot of difficulties with the Northern Irish or Scottish accent. Okay. So accents of various speakers can be difficult to understand if students have only ever heard the teacher's English accent. Okay. Or Irish English or American English accent, or English from whatever country. Okay. So the solution to this is very logical, very simple. The teacher needs to find examples of different accents to assist the student's exposure to variants of English. Okay, so whenever you can, bring in some authentic material that highlights a speaker with an accent that is different to the teacher's, use it. The only way we're going to get our students used to listening to other accents is by exposure, right? Course books and textbooks are really quite poor for this. They always tend to have that standard RP Southern English accent, like the royal family English. Okay, so it's your job as a teacher to expose your students to as many different accents of English as possible. Okay, it needn't only be native speaker accents. Okay, it could be accents from all over the world. All right, exposure is key. Another disadvantage is that topics may not be suitable for a mixed gender or multicultural class. Okay, it's hard to find authentic material that does not in any way offend someone. Okay, it can be hard to find, but you must avoid topics, inflammatory topics like politics, sexism, racism, violence, death. Okay, try to avoid texts with loads of swear words, profanity, etc. Okay, I've often found a really, really nice authentic material text, but there's just been one line where I'm just like, no, I am not using that. Okay, I'm not willing to risk that offending someone, alienating someone, or being taken up the wrong way by someone. Okay. What you could do is, remember we saw before about semi-authentic texts. If you find an authentic text that just has like 1 or 2 problematic sentences, take them out. Okay, just, type up the text again and leave out the problematic ones, the problematic sentences. That can be a solution if the text is otherwise really, really good. Always bear in mind, though, that the focus is on learning the language. Okay, so all students must be comfortable with the material they are exposed to. If you even have the slightest doubt that the text may be offensive to someone in the class, don't use it or edit it. Okay, honestly, it is not worth the risk. Because it's horrible if you use a text and it ends up upsetting someone. That is just the worst. You don't want to do that. Okay, so just to finish up then, let's take a look at some key tips for using authentic material in class. This is the authentic material mantra. Okay, grade the task, not the text. All right. So what do I mean by this? Well, I mean that if you find an authentic text that is a bit difficult for the level that you're teaching, you can always simplify the task, not the text, because the text is authentic, right? It is what it is, but you can grade the task. For example, if you find a really good news report, the BBC website often has these like lovely short news reports that are on BBC News, right? So they are authentic. But some of the vocabulary, for example, can be difficult. So if I wanted to use a news report with lower level students, I would grade the task by making the questions really simple, like what place is mentioned in the news report? Or what numbers do you hear in the police report or in the news report? Okay. Or how many people or how many different names are said in the news report? Okay. So the students will still be listening to the original news report, but they're only looking for the very obvious information, okay, the information that's easy to grasp. Okay, so that would be an example of grading the task, not the text. If you wanted to use the same news report with a high-level class, maybe advanced students, then you could make the questions a lot more difficult, okay? Like you could ask them to summarize, the story, like summarize the incident, or you could get them to write the sequence of events mentioned in the news report, okay? You could get them to do role plays like a journalist interviewing the police officer, okay? Or the interview between the criminal and the police officer, okay? I don't know why I'm so obsessed with crime today, guys. I'm sorry. As I told you, I was watching a lot of crime drama last night. Maybe it has infiltrated my brain. But yeah, so you can use the text as it is, but grade the task. Make the questions easier or more difficult according to the ability of your students. The other top tip I have is to provide ample scaffolding. Scaffolding is another word for the support that we give our students. Examples here of scaffolding could be pre-teaching vocabulary. Okay, so like we said, if you know that there are words or phrases they won't understand, teach them in advance. Yeah, remove the obstacle before they listen or read. Another thing we can do to help our students is to activate prior knowledge beforehand. Okay, so in the warmer, you could say, so later on, we're going to read a text all about tourism. Okay, not crime. Let's give crime a break. We're going to read a text all about tourism. So with your partner, I want you to tell each other about the last place you visited and the best place you have visited and a place you would love to visit. Okay. Alternatively, you could say, okay, think about the place you're from. Is it very touristy? Yeah. What are the advantage tourism brings and the disadvantage that tourism brings to your area? Okay. It doesn't matter really, what the specific question is, as long as we get students thinking about the topic in advance. Okay, that warms up their brains so that when it comes time to read or listen, they're in the zone and they already have an idea of the type of thing they will hear or read. Okay, so scaffolding is super, super important. Other things to bear in mind when using authentic material. Do remember to offer reassurance throughout and acknowledge students' effort. Students can find it a bit daunting at first. Maybe they'll struggle with understanding a little at first. So, be on hand to tell them, look, it's okay. It's okay if you don't understand this. Just ask me and I'll help. Okay. Offer them some praise. Okay. Like, okay, you're nearly there. Keep going. Okay. You've worked through most of it. See if you can work out the meaning of this word from the context. Okay. I know you can. Yeah, do your best. All right. We don't want to be constantly in their ear cheerleading at them because, that'll probably distract them. But we definitely want to reassure and we want to acknowledge their effort. Okay, that will make the students more likely to want to continue with the authentic material. Also, please aim to use authentic material as frequently as possible. All right, practice makes perfect. Get them reading texts, get them listening to speakers from different countries, give them a broad range of topics. Yeah, practice makes perfect. Use them as much as you can. So just before we start our Q&A session, let me give you some examples of authentic materials and how you can use them. Role play can be a really nice task based on authentic material. You can combine authentic texts with realia. Realia just means like real life objects. Okay. For example, if you wanted to practice English in a restaurant context, you could bring in some menus. Yeah. Print them off from online print them off from restaurants' websites, perhaps. Maybe don't steal them from restaurants. They're super expensive. You could bring in maybe some food. You could bring in some cutlery. You could set the desk up like a table. Okay, and yeah, that could lend itself really well to a nice role play, waiter guest role play. Songs and video clips are amazing to use. You could play the song a few times and then select vocabulary and themes from the song or video to then have a small group discussion. Okay. More examples might be bringing in a newspaper, a magazine, a blog post, or a social media post, and let your teenagers or adults read and then discuss it in small groups. Okay, so authentic material can be amazing as a prompt for discussion. Even if you just bring in a photograph with a small caption under it, okay, that could be an amazing speaking prompt. My personal favorite example here, and something I do all the time, next time you're in an English-speaking country, take some leaflets or maps from a hotel or a tourist office. They always have that table with like tons of leaflets and information. Always grab a good handful of those, okay, and keep them. So that when you're teaching your students, you can give them all of these leaflets to read and all of these maps to look at, and then they can plan a trip to that place, okay, using the authentic material. Another thing I always grab when I see it is an application form. Sometimes there'll be like stacks of application forms for, I don't know, information on a new mobile phone deal, or maybe applying for some travel pass or something. Always grab tons of application forms, because when you're teaching lower level students especially, it can be amazing for them to practice, their names, writing their name, where they're from, their phone numbers, their email address. Of course, they do not need to apply for anything. Okay, this is just for reading and writing practice. And again, that's especially important for students who will one day live in an English-speaking country, or in a country where English will be their medium. Okay, so yeah, chances are if you're in a hotel or a tourist office and you see somebody like cramming dozens of leaflets into their bag, that will probably be me or another EFL teacher. All right. So yeah, they are just some of my favorite ways to use authentic materials. Okay, so that is more than enough from me for the moment. I'm going to turn it over to all of you. Okay, if you have any questions about using authentic materials, now is your chance. Okay, pop your questions in the chat box, and we will go through them as they start coming in. While you're thinking of questions related to authentic materials, I'm going to look back through your messages and see where you are all viewing from today. Okay, so hello Zarin, good to see you. And Niven in South Africa, very nice, welcome. Megan in North Wales, oh, just across the ocean, Megan, or the ocean, the sea even, just across the sea in North Wales. Sanet, Antigua and Barbuda, oh, that sounds amazing, Sanet. Now that is a place I would love to go. Laura in Argentina, thank you so much for joining us today. John in Edinburgh, oh, I love the accent in Edinburgh, John. It's one of my favorite in the whole world. I wish I could hear you talk. Okay. Agnieszka in England. Oh, Brian in Ireland. Oh, nice to see you, Brian. I'm in Galway. Where are you? We probably know each other. Everyone in Ireland knows each other in some way. We have Abbas, Lynn in Portugal. Oh, Gloria in Canada. Welcome. All right. So, Megan, you're first in with a question. When would we need to request permission from somewhere to use authentic materials? Good question, Megan. So when it comes to copyright, okay, generally, if we are using anything for educational purposes, it will be exempt from copyright. Okay. So if, for example, it's something from a news website or a lifestyle blog, yeah, it should be fine to use. Okay. If it's something from like a news agency, you know, that should be fine. As long as you're using it for educational purposes, yeah, you can work away without permission. I would say though, if you're taking it from social media, maybe like one, you know, private account, like from one individual person, you may want, just out of courtesy, to ask them if it's okay to be used. There's also a lot of copyright rules over photographs. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I work under the principle that if it's being used for individual or for academic or educational purposes, and if the photographer is credited like under the photo, I will use it. Okay. Again, though, if it's, you know, somebody's you know, personal Instagram account or whatever, and you want to use their photo, I would feel hesitant to do that without having their permission. Okay. For photographs, stock photos are quite the safe bet. Okay. Or if you Google copyright-free photos. Okay. That said, though, if it's from a newspaper, you know, fair game. It's out there for the world to see. All right. Thank you, Megan. Good question. I mean, if in doubt, ask for permission. Okay. It'll never do any harm. Okay. So John, northwest of England, that's still great. Yeah, that would be northwest. Oh no, I'm thinking northeast. Yorkshire is northeast, right? But northwest, I'm sure it's an equally beautiful accent, John. Okay. CG. Oh, you've completed your course, CG. Oh, that's great. Congratulations. It's been lovely having you with us all throughout these webinars. So yeah, go teach. I'm excited for you. That's great. Well done. All right. So the questions are a little slow coming in. So start thinking then about types of authentic material you could use, yeah, or ways you could exploit it. Okay. Think about what you could do if something is too difficult, yeah, or you know, what type of tasks would lend themselves well to authentic materials. Think along those lines, and if any questions occur to you, please put them in the chat box. While we're waiting for more questions, I'm actually going to share a really good website that I use quite a lot for authentic materials. I'm going to put it in the chat box. It's called Breaking News. This is my usual problem. I can never remember if it's .com or .org, so I'm just going to double check. Oh, it's .com. I mean, I know it's .com, but I always doubt myself in the moment. So if you go along to breakingnewsenglish.com, okay, that's amazing. They have like authentic news reports, yeah, texts, and I think videos. But I usually use it for texts. And on the website, the news reports are authentic, but they then offer graded tasks. So they will have the news report and then easy, medium, or difficult. And depending on the level of your students, yeah, they already have the tasks graded for you so that you don't need to go and simplify questions or anything like that. It's all done for you. So yeah, please do check out breakingnewsenglish.com. It's really, really good. Another place I tend to find a lot of my authentic materials is on the website. I'm going to pop it in the chat box. is the TED Ed website. Have you heard of TED Ed? It's kind of like TED Talks, but with more educational slants to them. Okay, there are such interesting videos, even on the normal TED website. Okay, TED Talks website, you'll find the most amazing stuff. But I really do like TED Ed. I'm going to pop the URL in the chat box. So it's www.ed.ted.com. Okay. Some of the videos come with tasks already made. Some of them you make up your own. But yeah, it's a really, really great resource for authentic materials. Like when you're watching videos, like, maybe you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook and this TED Talk pops up and it's only like 5 minutes long, and you listen and you're thinking, oh God, that sounds so good. That's so interesting. Use that with your students, because chances are if you find it interesting, they will also find it interesting. All right. So yeah, breakingnewsenglish.com and ed.ted.com are some of my favorite authentic texts, authentic materials sources. Another thing you can do is go to the website of whatever newspaper you read. Okay. For example, I read the Irish Independent all the time. So if I go to their website and I go to the lifestyle section, I will always find interesting articles there. Okay, because in the lifestyle section they talk about things like wellness, food, travel, how to deal with stress, 10 top tips on how to relax, unwind. That's the sort of interesting stuff that especially adults like reading. All right. So like the lifestyle section of any newspaper website will often yield some amazing authentic materials. When it comes to kids, you can still use authentic materials if you're teaching young learners. Websites like National Geographic Kids can turn up lots of interesting stuff. And, very age-appropriate stuff like, texts about animals, about travel, about science. So, if you are teaching young learners, you can definitely still use authentic materials. Just go to websites aimed at children. Okay. Yeah, National Geographic Kids is a nice one. I like that one a lot. Okay. So let's see, Mike, we have a question. Some textbooks like American English File have a lot of tasks and exercises to do, and even a grammar bank that explains every grammar point. In this case, do I need to teach it my own way? Oh, okay, so there's like a little grammar bank or a vocab bank. Well, I would say, Mike, use the one in the book if you like it. If you think it could be better, do it your own way. Okay, generally it's up to you. You decide. But if you do like the way it's done in the book, just do that. Okay. If you want to change it, that's okay too. Actually, that's a really good point, Mike, about grammar banks and vocab banks. That can be a really good way to make an authentic material text more accessible. So if you're giving them, a reading text, instead of pre-teaching all the really difficult words, just make a little list underneath and say, tell the students while you're reading the text and there's a word you don't understand, check if it's explained in the vocab bank. Okay. So yeah, actually, thank you, Mike. That is a great point. That could be an excellent way to support students in their comprehension of authentic material. Like a little mini dictionary, right? But only like a list. We don't want to overwhelm them with tons of information either, but vocab and grammar banks are an excellent solution. All right, thank you, Mike. So hello, Senate. Would using AI to get text materials be authentic? Oh, AI is so problematic, isn't it? I would say no, Sanet, because it's machine generated, right? It's not actually, the text is not actually coming from the brain of a person, of a native or native-like proficient speaker. Okay. Honestly, I would be quite hesitant to use AI because it doesn't expose them to all of the stuff that makes authentic material useful. Okay. So my answer to this would be no. I would not consider it to be authentic. Okay. I'm sure it has its place, and I'm sure it can be useful. But I might use it in certain situations, but I would never think of it as authentic material because, it's not generated by a person. Okay, and it's not out there for the wide population. It's only there to serve the individual person who is creating it or asking it to be created. That's a whole other debate, isn't it? The use of AI. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about it, quite honestly. Okay. So hello, Lynn. Do these sources have authentic material for young learners? TED, possibly. Okay, depending on the topics that you choose. A lot of the TED Talks are done with animation anyway. So as long as the topic is age appropriate, I think you could use it. BreakingNewsEnglish.com, I don't think so. I've certainly never ever used it for young learners, but have a look anyway. But I don't think so. I think it's better for teens and for teenagers and adults. I would stick to the websites specifically aimed at kids. Kids in Ireland or kids in the UK or kids in America or kids in Australia or New Zealand. Okay. For example, National Geographic Kids. Yeah. But yeah, anything a kid whose mother tongue is English would watch or listen to, you could certainly use with your young learners. Okay. Brian, from County Louth on Meath. Very good. Well, Brian, you are the first person I've met from County Louth, believe it or believe it not. Welcome. Nice to meet you. Okay. So, hello, Jürgen. What about using humorous, authentic material, jokes, and the like? Oh, for sure, Jürgen. Yeah, that would be really, really fun. The only thing that I tend to find is that things that I find funny, okay, like if I read a humorous piece and I think, oh my God, that's the funniest thing I've ever written, I've ever read. I then show it to my students from Spain or wherever, from Switzerland, maybe from China, maybe there's someone from Japan, maybe there's someone from Brazil. They read it and they don't always get the humor because the problem is that humor is very cultural, right? So what is hilarious for me as an Irish person might be completely lost on my students. And then I have to start explaining, oh, well, this is why it's funny. And you know that there's no surer way to kill the humor in anything than by having to explain it bit by bit why it's funny. So by all means, use it. Yeah, but don't be surprised if your students don't find it as funny as you do. Okay, that's an unfortunate truth. Yes, lost in translation. Absolutely, Jürgen. But that said, it never stops me trying. Like if I find something funny, I will always bring it to my students. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. And if they don't, that's okay too. It's still all valuable reading and listening practice. All right, but yeah, great point, Jürgen. I find that joke books, like those joke books for kids, like the 100 funniest jokes, like the really short ones, they can sometimes work quite well. But also some of the jokes are actually quite advanced, like they play on phrasal verbs or they play homophones. But yeah, always give it a go though. Why not? Okay. And Zarin, do we have a question? Oh, Zarin, you're finished. Oh, congratulations. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, you've been another constant presence in the webinars. Thank you so much for always showing up and always having great questions. Yeah, oh, I'm really pleased for you. Congratulations. All right. So do we have any other questions? I'm sure you can dig out some more questions. In the meantime, let me talk to you about ads, TV ads. So TV ads are just some of my favorite things to use as authentic materials. The really good thing is that you can find tons of them on YouTube. Okay, and the other great thing about them is that they're really short, right? They're generally under a minute long. So I don't know if any of you from outside the UK or Ireland are familiar with Specsavers. Specsavers are, hang on, I'll type it in the chat box. So Specsavers have like some of the very, very best ads on TV, in my opinion. Jürgen, you were asking about humor. The Specsaver ads are so funny, okay? They're very visual, as you can imagine. And the tagline is always the same: should have gone to Specsavers. Okay, so they just kind of, the ads are of people misunderstanding a situation or getting themselves into a troublesome situation because they can't see something properly because they're not wearing their glasses. The possibilities with these ads are endless, okay? They don't tend to have a script. So, you can get your students to watch and to make up a script to accompany the video, or you can get them to imagine what they would do if they were in that situation. You can play the beginning of the ad and then pause it and ask students to predict what comes next or what they think will happen in the end. Yeah, the Specsavers ads are amazing. You can really, really exploit them in the classroom, and they're a lot of fun. So yeah, do consider using TV ads as a nice kind of introduction to authentic materials for your students, or as a way of just using it for like 5 minutes in a class, just, at the beginning of class or the end of class, okay? Or if it's tied in with the context of the lesson somewhat. Okay. Laura, is it for kids? Yeah, why not? Yeah, I think it would work with pretty much any age group. But yeah, check out the ads on Facebook and see if you can find anything that you could use. Okay. Hello again, Mike. How to use songs in my classes? I mean, they're not graded and they might have a lot of words that my students find difficult to recognize or maybe familiar. Yeah, absolutely. Songs are like the ultimate authentic material. So yeah, just the same as you would with a written text, Mike, just go through it, pick out the words that you know they won't use, that are important for understanding the whole thing, and pre-teach them, remove the stumbling blocks in advance. Or, you can write a little vocab bank at the bottom of the worksheet, okay? Or you could let them listen to the song and read along with the lyrics, and then, ask them to underline certain words, and then in groups, let them talk and see if they can figure out the meaning of the word, okay? Maybe they can, maybe they can't, but it's really good. It's really good practice for them to try and guess the meaning in context themselves. All right. But yeah, there's really no other way around it. I think as well in songs, sometimes there are difficult words, but those words aren't really necessary to understand in order to follow the entire thing, in which case you can just leave them be. Okay, so just pre-teach the ones that they definitely need to understand in order to understand the theme of the song as a whole. I don't know, Mike, if you've ever heard of a website called lyricstraining.com. This is super fun. Let me put it in the chat box. Lyricstraining.com. I'm just going to check, is it lyric or lyrics? I think it's lyrics. Yeah, it is. Okay, so lyricstraining.com. This is an amazing website, everyone. And it's not just for English songs. It can be for songs in Spanish, songs in French, songs in German, you name it. It's there. And the idea is that the students listen along to the song, to the video. The lyrics are along the bottom. And every so often, the music video and the song will pause. And students are given like 4 options. And they have to choose what word they think they heard previously. But yeah, lyrics training is amazing. I use it all the time for Spanish. It's fun and it's just for practice, and it's something students can do at home on their own. Yeah. Or if you have an interactive whiteboard in your classroom, you can all do it together. Okay. But yeah, another thing, Mike, I like to do a lot with music videos. I will choose a song with a really good video. Okay. Then in the class, I will mute the sound and students will just watch the video. Okay. They'll just watch the 2 minutes of video. And then I'll ask them to predict, okay, what type of song or what type of music do you think this is? Yeah. Is it a sad song? Is it a happy song? Is the tempo fast? Is it slow? Yeah. What do you think the song is about? Okay. So, they make all of these predictions just based on the video. All right. And then when they've told you all of the predictions, you can listen with the sound and then they can decide, where their prediction's correct or not. And, with questions like that, like, do you think the music is happy or sad, or, is it fast or slow? Students don't necessarily need to understand all of the lyrics in order to answer those questions. So it can be a nice way to grade the task rather than the text. You will find, though, that you will need to find some obscure-ish videos, maybe from other countries, because if it's a song that they already know and they'll already know the video for, that removes the prediction element. Okay. As I found out once when I used a video from an Ed Sheeran song, Castle on the Hill. It's a great video, but of course, as soon as the students saw it, they were like, Ed Sheeran. And I was like, okay, well, what will I do for the next 30 minutes now that you all know the song already? So yeah, try to choose something a bit obscure that they will not be familiar with. All right. So, question, Brian, can I use arts and crafts design-based topics as some students may have different aspects to learning? Hope that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Why not? Arts and crafts are amazing. Or like designing posters, designing anything. Like, with TV ads, they could design like a logo for a product, or they could, design their own product. Anything like that. Absolutely. Like, the really good thing about arts and crafts is that if you go to an arts and crafts website aimed at children, like if you're doing this with children, they will give like really easy instructions, like step-by-step instructions, like how to make something or how to create something. So yeah, absolutely. If you can find an arts and crafts project with very, clear instructions, for sure, that would be an amazing use of authentic materials. Yeah, I must try that myself. Next time I'm teaching young learners, that could be really, really fun. You'll also find like really good videos on YouTube for this, like step-by-step video tutorials, like how to make an origami butterfly, or how to make a bird, or, how to make a plastic bottle into a unicorn or something. Yeah, that would be great, Brian. Good idea. So yeah, basically anything, like my rule of thumb is anything that I find interesting, my students are likely to find interesting. Yeah, anything that I would have loved to do as a child, yeah, my young learners will probably love to do as well. All right. So there we go, everyone. Our hour is up. Oh my goodness, that flew by. So thank you all for sticking with me. Hopefully you've got lots of really good ideas now for how to integrate authentic materials into your classes. Please do use it like as much as you can. It will seriously benefit your students in the long run. Okay. You know, it will bring them along in leaps and bounds, I promise. It's just something you need to do regularly, as often as you can. Okay, so just before we go, everyone, I have my usual favor to ask you. As you know, after every webinar, we ask you to complete a survey. Oh, surveys are another good authentic material source. Yeah, absolutely. So we'd like you to complete the survey, please, just to give us your opinions on the webinar. Because as you know, as teachers, we are always looking to improve, okay? And your feedback is key to this. So you have the QR code on screen. I'm also going to type it into the chat box just for easier access in case you don't have a QR scanner. Okay, or DA Live. All right, there we go. So that link should take you to the survey if you have a couple of minutes. All right, so thank you so much, everyone. It's been wonderful to talk to you all. Oh, danke schön. Oh, you're so welcome, Jürgen. Oh, Megan. Diolch. Diolch. Oh, I wish I could say that, Megan. Does it mean thank you in Welsh? Welsh is amazing. It's a beautiful, beautiful language. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and hopefully I will see you all again soon. Okay, bye-bye.